Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Final Disaster. This is Battlefield 1. In today's weapon showdown, we're taking a closer look at all available medic weapons in the game to figure out which of them is best suited for close quarter combat. We're going to be taking a closer look at the M1907 SL, the Autoloading 8.25 Extended, and of course the Cei-Rigotti, talk a little bit about their base stats, attributes, and associated playstyles, and then of course compare them and try to figure out which of them is best suited for close quarter combat and why. Starting off then with the stats of the weapons in question, as we always do. If you want to learn a little bit more about the weapons that we're talking about today, because I will be covering their stats and attributes in a relatively brief fashion, feel free to check out the individual weapon reviews that I did for each one of these weapons. They'll be linked down below in the description and of course above in the info card for you to find. With that being said, however, let's start with the first weapon that we're going to be looking at today, the M1907 SL, both trench and sweeper, because in my opinion both of these weapons qualify for close quarter combat amongst the medic weapons. And as you will see, there's a key difference between the two and a choice you are going to have to make if you want to take one of these, because they do have a serious trade-off between them. With that being said, however, let's get into the stats of the weapons with a maximum damage of 42 and a minimum damage of 23 for the M1907. You've got a guaranteed 3-shot close quarter potential, no surprises there, and at longer ranges you're going to be requiring 5 bullets. Its fire rate is relatively slow, or to say average for the comparison in today's video, at 299 rounds per minute. There is higher, faster firing weapons in the game. This, however, does compared with a 21 bullet magazine, meaning reloading isn't going to have to happen too frequently. Its muzzle velocity at 570 meters per second is certainly not very good, constraining this weapon, of course, to close quarter and medium range combat. With that being said, let's move on to the reload times. This relatively large magazine is reloaded in a very timely fashion, thankfully, at 2.3 seconds. That's what it's going to take you for the short reload, with a longer reload at about 3.5 seconds, definitely still bearable. Its recoil differs between the two variants there are for these weapons, with the SL Trench having a little bit more recoil at vertical 0.8, and to the left and right that is horizontal recoil of 0.42, whereas the Sweeper version, which has identical horizontal recoil, has a little bit less vertical recoil at 0.56. With that then being said, let's move on to the accuracy of this weapon with a standard ADS of 0.21. that is identical for all of the weapons we're looking at in today's video. That's aiming down sight while standing still. Its hipfire values differ between the SL Sweeper and Trench variants, with the Sweeper at 2.5, relatively accurate and accurate enough for close quarter, not great for those close quarter medium range engagements, meaning you're going to have to aim down sight, whereas the Trench variant at 1.5 can comfortably hip fire down anybody, I would argue, within 20 meters. With that being said, there's one more difference I would like to point out between these two weapons. While the SL Trench, with a little bit more recoil and better hip fire accuracy, seems to be the clear candidate for close quarter combat, it does not have an automatic firing mode that the SL Sweeper does, meaning that it's going to be a lot harder to achieve your maximum fire rate of 299 rounds per minute with the Trench variant compared to that of the SL Sweeper variant. Moving on then to the next weapon in a comparison, the Autoloading 8.25 Extended. It once more has a max damage at 38 that allows for a 3-shot close quarter kill, and a minimum damage at 21 that allows for a 5-shot long range kill. Its fire rate is the highest in our comparison today at 359 rounds per minute, making it the clear favorite, at least to begin with, for close quarter combat. It comes with a smaller magazine compared to the M1907 at 16, nevertheless plenty to go through at least 3 enemies, a muzzle velocity which is slightly higher at 660 meters per second, nevertheless still not great for long range shooting, and relatively timely reloads, with the short reload identical to the M1907 at 2.3 seconds, and the long reload the fastest in our comparison today at 2.8 seconds. This comes alongside the lowest recoil in our comparison today, with horizontal recoil of 0.3 to the left and right, and vertical recoil at 0.51, making this weapon the most controllable of all of the ones we'll be looking at today. Its accuracy values are identical to those of the M1907 SL Sweeper, and that has an ADS while standing and aiming down sight of 0.21 and hipfire at 2.5, making it in the hipfire department inferior to both the SL Trench and the Cei-Rigotti Trench, which we will be looking at next. Speaking then of that Cei-Rigotti Trench, it has a maximum damage of 38, once more a guaranteed 3-shot close quarter kill, and interestingly enough, a minimum damage of 28, making a long range 4-shot kill better, of course, than the other two weapons weapons which require 5 bullets at those ranges. Its rate of fire is identical to the SL in that it's 299 rounds per minute, inferior of course to the Autoloading. It comes with the highest muzzle velocity in our comparison today at 700 meters per second, making it a little bit more flexible for medium range, long range shooting. Nevertheless, this weapon is not to be mistaken as long range DMR. Its magazine size at 10 is probably what keeps this weapon back the most. Not only has it got the smallest magazine in our comparison today, but it as per se isn't a magazine. Instead, this weapon is fed with single bullets or strip clips, meaning that reloads take a lot longer and, given the smaller magazine size, have to be done a lot more frequently. Moving on to the recoil of the Cei-Rigotti trench with vertical recoil of 0.7 and recoil to the left and right, that's horizontal recoil at 0.32. It's definitely controllable, however, is more towards the upper end of the recoil we're looking at today. It certainly can't compete with the Autoloading 8.25 in this department. Its accuracy is identical to that of the SL trench, that is an ADS standing while not moving, aiming down sight at 0.21 and hipfire at 1.5, making it, like the SL trench, excellent at hipfiring down enemies in close quarter combat. With that all then being said, let's move on to the analysis section of this video. The winner amongst the 3 weapons we're discussing today, or the better for close quarter combat, is in my opinion very difficult to decipher, and one of the reasons for this is, well, there's a number of special attributes or key differences that make these weapons clearly different from each other but not necessarily better, and there's key differences here between the ideal combat ranges, even though they may still all conclude or be seen to be within close quarter ranges. To give you a little bit of an idea what I mean, let's look at the M1907 SL Trench and its SL Sweeper variant. You can have here better hipfire, great for extreme close quarter. However, you're going to be firing slightly lower fire rate because of course you can't get the automatic 299 rounds per minute that the automatic firing option on the SL Sweeper does allow you for. Furthermore, of course, you're dealing with more recoil. The Autoloading 8.25 may have the highest fire rate in our comparison today, however it doesn't come with the option, independent of which version of the Autoloading you take, to have an automatic firing rate. In other words, you're never truly going to achieve the 359 rounds per minute. Nevertheless, it should have a higher fire rate overall than that of the M1907 SL Trench, Sweeper, or Cei-Rigotti. Speaking of the Cei-Rigotti, which also boosts an automatic firing mode by the way, it may seem the all-rounder, the most balanced of all the weapons in question, one that will also succeed at medium range. However, you're always fighting that reload, and especially in more chaotic maps, chaotic game modes, more clustery infantry focused combat, you can find yourself simply not having enough bullets to deal with the enemies that you want to deal with, whereas if you had the Autoloading or the M1907 SL, you could be getting a number of more kills or dying a number of times less. So I find it very difficult to actually determine which of these weapons is best. However, I find it a little bit more easy to determine which of these weapons is best at what. In my opinion, the Autoloading 8.25 Extended is clearly, for extreme close quarter, the best choice. Its slightly worse hipfire shouldn't make a difference at ranges under 10 meters, however its higher fire rate will most definitely make a difference. And if you're playing Argonne Forest, for example, I love running the Autoloading 8.25. If I'm not running Assault on that map, that is essentially what I am running, and I find myself extremely effective both combat wise, getting in people's faces and taking both assault players, LMG players, or fellow medic players out, and of course in fulfilling my role as medic, being able to stay aggressive, stay up front with all the assaults trying to push a corner or a corridor. I can provide a lot more revives and heals than I could if I were using one of the less aggressive weapons, or maybe even something like the Cei-Rigotti, where I constantly have to loop back and make sure I have enough bullets to deal with the next target coming around the corner. On the other hand, the Cei-Rigotti is the weapon I'd probably choose of these 3 for most conquest game modes, simply because, well, most conquest game modes don't have exclusive close quarter. There's at least going to be quite a bit of substantial medium range, if not long range, and while the Cei-Rigotti may not be great for long range, it's certainly more capable than the other weapons in question, and actually very capable at medium range. Will you outshoot an LMG user who's on point? Likely not, but will you have at least a fighting chance, and with the help of superior accuracy or firing at your enemy first, be able to take them out? Most definitely. Whereas if you were using the Autoloading 8.25 Extended or the M1907 SL Trench, I think, at least in my opinion and my experience, you're not so well off. And then lastly, of course, we have the M1907 with the both Trench and Sweeper variant. This gun is somewhat in between the 2 extremes of the Cei-Rigotti being the most flexible regarding general combat of the weapons discussed today, and the Autoloading 8.25 being the very focused, extreme close quarter weapon. It comes with a number of stats and traits that would indicate both flexibility and close quarter nature. The trench, for example, comes with relatively high recoil but good hipfire, of course a usual trait of close quarter weapons, and where recoil doesn't matter the most is of course in close quarter. The Sweeper also comes with an automatic fire mode, ideal for close quarter combat, whereas medium long range automatic fire modes aren't quite as useful, simply because you want to be as accurate as you possibly can, and firing single shots in my experience leads to better results in this. So really you're going to have to choose for yourself. Try these weapons out. In my opinion, all four of them, that is the M1907 SL Trench, the M1907 SL Sweeper, Autoloading 8.25 Extended, and Cei-Rigotti Trench. Don't forget to switch on the automatic firing modes for the weapons which can have that in this comparison, which would be the M1907 SL Sweeper and the Cei-Rigotti Trench, whereas the M1907 SL Trench and Autoloading don't have that ability. It really comes down to your personal preference, both on where you're using this weapon, what combat distances, if you're a big hipfire or you prefer automatic fire, for example, between the M1907 variants, and of course how confident you are with timing reloads, getting behind cover, how many enemy players you are necessarily facing. It is so dependent on your personal playstyle and the game mode and map design of the developers that really there is no definitive answer to which of these weapons is the truly best for close quarter combat, because close quarter combat can entail so many different versions of close quarter. It can have many enemy players, it can be multiple one-on-ones, it can be cover play, it can be in the open, it could be run and gun, or it could be more static of a combat experience. So as I've said, try out the weapons and decide for yourself. Personally, I prefer the Autoloading 8.25 Extended in most exclusive close quarter situations, whereas if I'm looking for the more flexible weapon, as I've said, I'm going to play a game of Conquest, I may likely go with the Cei-Rigotti Trench, which gives me both strength at medium range and close quarter, and for those longer range targets, I'll have a buddy sniper help me out for those instead. With that being said, feel free to leave your opinions and your experiences with the guns in questions down below in the comment, as well as of course your usual video suggestions. I'll be looking forward to reading those. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.